What up, crew? Good to see you guys this week. Hope everybody had a good weekend. So it is my turn to answer the question of how has pop music changed over the last several decades? So what I think is while the genres of music that have been considered pop have been played on the radio in the top 40s, things like that, that genre has definitely changed over the last several decades. I do think that the lyrics and the contents of what the songs are actually about has stayed pretty consistent throughout that time. So I was doing a little research on Google to try and help myself formulate an opinion here, and I came across a website that analyzed the last 50 years of pop music, just going by every 10 years starting from 1965. And just looking at the artists on here, it's clear that the kind of music that pop culture enjoys has changed in the past 60 years or so. It's gone from more kind of a light rock feel to R&B and rap of the 90s to the more modern sampling pop that we know today fairly well. So, I mean, that's a pretty good example, in my opinion, of how the actual kind of music that we've preferred to listen to has changed. But the article then goes on to say, it goes on to analyze the lyrics of these songs, and it creates a word map where it just takes all of the words that are mentioned in the songs and kind of clumps them together into a big cloud, and the more often that a word is mentioned, the larger it shows up in the graph. And looking through the contents of lyrics for each decade, there is actually quite a bit of consistency. Most prominently, the use of the word love. Top three for words used since 1965, every year since then. Looking for other trends besides love, it also is apparent that sex is talked about quite a bit, partying is talked about quite a bit, freedom is talked about a lot, and then something that appears more in the later half, so like from 1995 onward, we actually start seeing the influence of rap and R&B and the most used lyrics, and a lot of them are talking about their life, like street life when they were growing up in a poor community. A lot more about partying, a lot more about money, things like that. You hear it on the radio all the time. And then one last thing that I noticed about all of this is that as the decades progress towards now, it seems to me that songs are getting more vulgar, or they have more profanity in them than they have in years past. Basically, if you look at the graphs of how often words are used, things about drugs and alcohol, violence, sexual content, anything related to profanity, swearing, was either very much less used or non-existent from 65 till about 85, and then starting in the 90s is when you start seeing a lot more swearing, a lot more references to drugs and alcohol, sex, things like that, than it was in years past. So it's kind of interesting because you always hear about old people saying that kids these days don't know, or their music is inappropriate and should be listening to it, and it sets bad examples for them. And even though, from my perspective, that's probably a bit exaggerated, it does actually seem like they might be onto something with the message that's being portrayed by pop music to be more and more profound and not inappropriate. I guess to sum it up, I would just say that while the kind of music that we've listened to has changed a lot, the overall message has remained mostly consistent, with it becoming slightly more profound and inappropriate than it did in years past. But that about wraps it up, so I hope you guys have a good week, and I look forward to watching all of your responses to this in the previous videos. Bye!